All right. Good morning, everyone. How y'all feeling? Good? My name is Brandon Rodriguez. I use he, him pronouns, and I have the amazing job of introducing our featured speaker, Christy Johnson. As you all know, these student stories are vital to the work we do in transfer and really should be the center of every decision we make in transfer. With that being said, I'll introduce our amazing speaker, Christy. Christy L. Johnson is the Assistant Director of Admissions at Spelman College. She is an author, motivational speaker, and college consultant from Chicago, Illinois. Christy is no stranger to struggle and uses her real-life experiences, paired with her nurturing ways, to inspire young people in areas with high urban populations nationwide. A current resident of the Atlanta metropolitan area, Christy's motto is "Be the change you seek," and she lives this motto day in and day out. Without further ado, let's give a warm round of applause to the incomparable Christy Johnson.
Oh. Test. Am I on? Am I good? Can you guys hear me? Yes. Incomparable. Oh, okay. Well, let me go ahead and get myself together. Good morning, Transfer Champions. I hope you all have enjoyed an amazing time here at the conference. Unfortunately, I have missed almost every meeting, every session, trying to get here with this crazy storm. But last night I did get in just time enough to meet up with some of the fellow directors. So I just want to go ahead and get started. I know we're short of time. When Brandon was introducing me and was saying the words of, I use my struggles as a way to kind of work with students and just have that empathy, be able to empathize with them. I consider myself as a transfer guru. I think it was Herman who said maybe the queen of transfer. And I say that because I transferred 7 times in college. So that's like a zero, no hire type thing. I don't need anybody to tell me that they did more than that because I'm the transfer queen. So when I say that I am fluent in transfer, I tried every type of college except for a community college. So HBCU, small private, large public, PWI. I have tried everything. So I use that to really try to hone in with my students to try to make sure that their process, it goes well, that they feel like they are seen and heard. So today, these student stories, I feel like they are on par with that. You guys are gonna find out some great things about these students. You all have already heard from them a couple of times, I think, throughout the conference. So we'll dig in a little bit more to their stories because there's some really unique things here. So let me dig in. My first question is for Katie. Oh, first of all, wait, let me go ahead and let them introduce themselves. Really quickly, can you all go through and introduce yourselves? I want them to know where you guys are from and all that good stuff.
Thank you so much. Really excited to be here with everyone. Hi, everyone. My name is Herman Chavez. I use he, they, and L pronouns. I am a 4th-year student, 2nd-year transfer at UCLA, studying ethnomusicology and comparative literature, and I transferred from Colorado State University.
Hello, everybody. My name is Katie Ibsen. I use she, her series pronouns. I transferred from Sacramento City College to the University of California, Berkeley, and I currently study anthropology.
See if this works. Can you hear me? Yes, okay. Hello, my name is Noelle. I go to the University of Notre Dame. I'm a junior. I transferred from the University of Vermont, and I'm studying classics and philosophy.
What's up, everyone? Good morning to y'all. So, thank you. I love the energy being reciprocated. So my name is Paolo Canteras, and I am a transfer student from Long Beach City College to UC Irvine. And I use he, him, they, them pronouns. And my majors are psychology and sociology. And welcome to this session.
Awesome. And I told them that you guys are going to be super, super friendly because I did have some, just in case to shove off any nerves. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Katie, my first question is for you. What word would you use or words would you use to describe your transfer process?
The word that came to mind when I was considering this last night is self-directed. When I came into community college, I essentially had to figure out everything by myself. I figured out what the transfer process looked like, what courses I needed to take, what major I was going to major in. I did all of that by myself, and I think part of that is because I went to the extension campus for Sacramento City College when I first started out. It was on UC Davis's campus because that's where I grew up. But even when I got to Sacramento City College, I was coming into contact with community college advisors and not transfer advisors. So they didn't understand the transfer process as well as the transfer advisor did, and unfortunately I didn't make contact with her until my last semester at Sac City. So self-directed is the word that I chose.
Wow, okay. And just to kind of hone in just a little bit more, since we started with that question, what do you think, and you said that you pretty much walked through this all on your own. So what do you think, transfer champions that are all in this room, what can we do to make this process a little bit more student-friendly?
I think that, at least in my case, in community college, all advisors should be transfer advisors.
Okay.
Because there was a difference at my community college.
Oh, yeah.
We had the people who were there just to help you figure out what classes you wanted to take and adjusting to life at Sacramento City College, but then we had one single transfer advisor who understood the CC to CSU or UC process. So I think because advisors are such a huge contact point for students who are coming into community college, they need to understand what the transfer process looks like and how they can best help you through that, because a lot of us don't know coming into community college that transferring is something you can do.
Yeah, it can be, and it could bring on so much anxiety, right? I'm sure just kind of as you were gauging through and just trying to put all the pieces together, it would have helped just having just that one person who kind of knew and understood just what you were going through. So thank you so much for that. My next question is for Paolo. So can you talk to me a little bit about what your transition was like going from community college over to a 4-year?
For mine was a little bit overwhelming. So I am an immigrant. So I moved out here in the U.S. at like 2015. So I grew up in a farm. I didn't grow up in the city. And when I came here, I didn't know about technology. I held my very first iPhone. So first off, my barriers like, how to use technology. 1, and 2, I had a language barrier because English is my third language. I know I'm speaking good right now, but it took a lot of years to get up to this point. Mm-hmm. So when I transferred from Long Beach City College to UC Irvine, my majors are impacted. So they're in the social sciences. So I think one of the challenges I've experienced personally is that everything is so rushed. So basically, they're going to see about 20 students, and we're going to help you with enrollment, but our transfer advisor was barely talking to any one of us. Just yeah, you got enrolled, I see it, it's solid, you're good to go. So I barely talked to them for 5 to 10 minutes or maybe less. Wow. Another thing is the orientation for transfer students were optional. And I think it's also a barrier that they want us to pay for orientation, about $200 or more probably. Wow. And basically, my experience was that we were only a group of 30 on that day. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, I was happy that we get to stay on campus for 1 day, but we were only one group of transfer students in a room of a bunch of freshman groups. So instead of catering to us transfers, they combined us into with the other incoming first years. So I felt we were just a side piece, I guess. A lot of the sessions about talking about transitioning to UC Irvine was catered towards to them, and not a lot of them catered to the transfer students. So I would say I want to echo what Katie said. I feel everything that I found out at UC Irvine, I actually either I researched them myself or I asked a fellow student about
Wow. And really quickly, I just want to take a tally amongst you all. How many of you, the universities, when you transferred in, had a separate transfer orientation? Was it a one-off and it was only for transfer students and it didn't include any okay, so not you. Okay, just wondering. All right. Wow. Ooh, I'm already learning a lot. All right, my next question is for Noelle. What differences can you share about attending a state college versus a private college?
Great question. So the University of Vermont and University of Notre Dame, they're actually comparable sizes and in a similar rural setting. So I wasn't expecting them to be too different, and there were many differences. I think something that the University of Vermont, obviously both have strengths and weaknesses, but I think UVM's strength was really representing students, taking in consideration student interest, letting directly asking students what their needs are in order to best accommodate them. But I think Notre Dame's greatest strength was probably their advising process. I've had a little bit of a different advising experience. We do have a transfer advisor from my college, and she's phenomenal. But it was a big process getting everything transferred over into Notre Dame and finding my orientation. So.
Oh, I already know that what that process looks like. I transferred once or twice, so I know what that is like. All right. Next question again to Paolo. I know that I was reading up on your process, and you stated earlier that you are from the Philippines. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to me about the differences, like what kind of differences you saw at the university or the college that you attended in the Philippines versus that process over here in the U.S.?
Yeah, it's pretty much like night and day, basically.
Really?
So in the Philippines, basically, when you apply to a university there's always an entrance exams. That entrance exam and your grades in your high school are the ones that sets you apart from the other students, basically. So it's very merit-based.
Okay.
So also, so when I got into my university in the Philippines, I would describe it as disciplined, strict, and very competitive, because they always say that this is mostly towards majors that are very impacted and very competitive. So for example, accounting, architecture, engineering. So most of those majors have what we call this their licensure exam. So basically, just to make sure that they filter out the students in my institution was we have what we call a battery test. So in your second year. So basically, it's a very anti-student practice in the Philippines. So basically, you take a test that encompasses all the things that you've learned throughout until your second year. And if you fail to get the specific score that the school is looking for, you basically got kicked out of that major. So me and my brother's a nursing major, and I was an accounting major. We were both victims of that. So me and my brother were solid students until the battery exam, and we both got kicked out of our institution, basically.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So when I came here to the U.S., I was I had such a traumatic time. I wasn't sure if I want to go back to college. But when I went to community college, they were very, very inclusive, I guess. Because I think my biggest worry was I'm already old. There's this stereotype among Filipinos you must be able to start working by the age of 22 and 23, and
wow.
Yeah, and I was I think I moved to community college around I was 21. So I was I feel old already. Kind of that
oh
moment.
My goodness, that fresh 21. Oh wow, Lord, sorry for you. No, I understand. from what you said, by the time in the Philippines, so by 22, 23, you need to be already in your field.
Yeah, you're supposed to be working by that time.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Now that is a lot of pressure. Did you feel do you guys, was that something that you felt super pressured by the time, because you're already given that number from early on, when you start school? Is this something that your parents are steadily talking to you about?
Right. It's it's really hard being being part of the Asian culture that's a stigma that's embedded into us. And me, who's who's a little bit non-traditional student, still going to school. For them, they make it seem it's okay, but they always say oh, you should be able to be working by now and helping the family, because they want us to be successful in an early age, and they put that invisible pressure on us.
Okay.
They don't say anything. It's not
they
my
don't
parents.
outright come out and
Yeah,
say,
outright.
Okay, I get you. So and just kind of touching on the non-traditional piece of it. So in the Philippines, is that something that is not I know here in the U.S. we applaud people oh, you're in your 30s and you have a whole family and you're going back to school, amazing, to finish up your bachelor's degree. Is that something that you guys don't? That's not something that's applauded out there.
There's some people who are non-traditional there, but it's being shamed upon,
Okay. Oh,
basically.
wow.
So
Wow.
it's kind of hard if they say because we have sections on our colleges. Basically, you take classes with your who are the same majors as you. So if
okay.
they see that you're behind That means like they tend to like shun you, or like, oh, he held back many years kind of thing.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Okay, so go US. Okay, all right. I love it. I love it because I guess I never thought about that because how it happens for other countries because here, I mean, I know by the time, it took me 15 years to finish up my bachelor's degree. That's first and foremost. So by the time from the time I started to the time I ended, I came in as a student that was right out of college, high school going to college, but then by the time I finished, I was a non-traditional student. So that transition was applauded the entire time, but I never thought about like thinking about other countries to where that's not so much the same sentiment. So wow, you shedding some light, giving me some tea. I didn't know. All right, so Herman, the next question is for you. So I know that you were immigrant. Your parents were immigrants. Okay. How did your parents communicate the importance of education here in the U.S.?
Yeah, absolutely. So my parents immigrated to the United States in 1997 from Bolivia, and they actually came here as beneficiaries of a diversity scholarship for international students to study in the U.S. So my dad came to continue his path of higher education here in the U.S., and my mom came along with him without speaking a word of English. Wow. And so when they came to the States, the plan was always to go back to Bolivia. My dad came to do his engineering degree here, and he wanted to go back in order to take that knowledge on engineering from the US and to support our communities back in Bolivia. But when he came and he experienced the educational infrastructure that the United States has, he realized that it would be a place where he wanted his children to have the opportunities to be raised within that system and have a stronger opportunity to gain those educational experiences that he knew we wouldn't quite get the same way in Bolivia. And so my parents decided to make that sacrifice and stay in the US in order for my little brother and I to have that access that we perhaps would not have gotten if my parents had gone back to Bolivia. So even from their immigration story, the value of education and the importance of sometimes needing to make sacrifices to go through an educational pathway that will create that access is something that I always grew up around. And it's something that my parents always reminded me that being here in the States, we had the access to things that we would not have had if we were in Bolivia. And so I always grew up knowing that education was something that I should always be valuing. And so even when barriers did come across my pathway, I knew that I had to continue going forwards. And there's not a lot of Bolivian immigrants in the United States. I don't know how many of y'all have met Bolivian immigrants here. And so sometimes it's a lonely experience to be in a country where there's not a lot of people that have the same culture or background that I do. But I think that knowing the sacrifices that my parents made and knowing that I have kind of continued in that same trajectory is something that I'm always really grateful for.
Kudos to your parents. Yes, that's for your parents. That's amazing. And the fact that they started a whole new, pretty much a whole tradition and just a new pathway for generations to come now, because you guys are all now here, right? So that's really cool, very exciting. So I know that I've been bouncing back between you and Paolo, but I really wanted to hone in a little bit to that international piece. Paolo, do you think that it was difficult to find that perfect fit for you just as an international student?
Yeah, it was quite difficult, because my parents, so my mom here was here, my mom was here in the U.S. Since 2012, but she herself are not fully aware of what educational resources was here. So for me, it's I have to do my own research. So I've learned that you have to stay in California to get state tuition fee. So I had a whole year to figure out a lot of things, where do I go? How do I pay for these schools? Are they very friendly towards international students or immigrants and stuff? So those are the things that I had to figure out to myself. One of the things that I've missed is because in the Philippines we don't have financial aid. So I was at first I didn't qualify for it because they said my mom was making a lot of money. But I have to pay out of pocket on during my community college days.
Wow.
Yeah, and also what are the academic rigor is like here in the U.S. It's something I had to like figure out. Like I told like my fellow ambassadors, like when it came to like community college, I asked them, oh, what is like the minimum and maximum units in your institution? They were like, oh, our maximum is 18 units, and I was like, that's like fun. That's funny. Tell me another one. And they were like, they were serious because like in the Philippines, like I actually checked like my college schedule just last night. I was like, how am I taking 27 units, basically 9 classes in a semester? That's like not feasible. Yeah. So I think what's great about like the community college system and me able to transfer is that I got the opportunity to like, be a critical thinker and not just only book smart. It's something that I haven't experienced. It was different for me. It was definitely a transfer shock to me that that I was able to like talk to my professors here. Like I get to like pick their brain and like talk about my major and be like nerdy for a second. But in the Philippines, I didn't have that privilege. I was like, the only time I get to see my professor is that I was like, oh, there's a mistake on my grade. Like I think you meant to give me an A, but you gave me a different letter.
Maybe you don't know your letters too
Yeah.
well.
Right.
Okay, wonderful. All right, Noelle, I read that you had a hand in starting a few new initiatives over at Notre Dame. So can you share some of those things with us?
Of course. So change is slow, but we're starting to lay the steps for a new transfer hub. Unfortunately, like a lot of the administration has experienced turnover, and I think that's a problem that some transfer students face. Is like I think 4 people I've worked with have since either been promoted to a different department or has since found a new employment, and so it's just restarting. But we're trying to lay the pathway for a transfer hub. We're starting to start a transfer club to get that communication between transfer students across the generation, and then we're also trying to I think we're working on a report to submit to the vice provost about different merit opportunities for financial aid for students.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. Do you think that some of the initiatives that you have in place right now are things that will ease this whole process or put the other prospective students behind you at ease a little bit more about this process?
I really hope so. Notre Dame has just recently announced that transfer students won't be receiving housing next year, which is a big deal on campus. We're kind of upset about that. And so I'm hoping that a transfer hub on campus would be a place where people feel welcome, like they have a place where they can go, but even just between classes and hang out, or where they can meet each other, because there's a very certain dorm culture promoted living on campus with the people. You miss out on those connections in an already an isolated environment. So I'm hoping by creating a space on campus, we'll be able to meet with each other, talk with each other, and develop those relations that otherwise we'd be missing out on.
So when you say hub, is this like a classroom set? Is it like what kind of area is it on campus that you guys are
TBD.
TBD. Okay.
Still laying the groundwork. Unfortunately, a lot of that progress had been started over because one of the people involved in that hierarchy has just been new employment. So we started over with a lot of that work, and then even within the student body transfer. It's hard to get momentum started among the transfer community in general, but when you have a new student body president every year and you have new student government in general, it's just even within students, it's hard to create that momentum.
Yeah, and I know sometimes it can be difficult, especially if you're talking like SGA, and if they have not gone through the transfer process, they may not understand how important or how huge an initiative like that would be, how important it would be for them, and then to keep having to have that conversation every year, I know it could be a little intense. Okay, all right. Thank you for that. Herman, can you tell me what were the top priorities of engagement for you as it relates to organizations and communities on campus for you over at UCLA?
Yeah, thanks for this question, Christy. So in my time at Colorado State, one of the primary issues that I faced was a lack of community and not feeling like I was visible in any space that I tried to explore or put myself into, and I didn't feel welcomed in a lot of places. So when I came to UCLA, I was really interested in finding a space where not only I could feel welcome, but where I could also contribute to other students feeling welcome, because I didn't want others to feel any way that I had while I was at my previous institution. And so it was really important for me to get plugged in with the transfer community really quickly, and I found that the way for me to combine that interest in being with other transfers who'd had similar experiences, and then also that piece of service and trying to make the UCLA experience better for other transfer students was through student government. And so that's how I got plugged into that, having never had any student government experience before. I found it to be a really perfect place where students were not only really proud of their transfer identity because it was what was fueling the change that we wanted to create on campus, but it was also a space where we could imagine new possibilities for the university for supporting transfers across campus. And so for me, that was really my biggest priority, and it's been where I have found my home at UCLA.
Awesome. Are any others involved in or have been involved previously with like the student government associations at your schools? No? You too? Okay. And what are you, Noelle, go ahead and, so what are you doing over there on the SGA?
So I was involved with student government both at the University of Vermont and at the University of Notre Dame. Vermont had to do with more of like budget matters, but when I got to Notre Dame, I was starting to see like there really wasn't a support group for transfers on campus. Like it's been so interesting listening to the conversations throughout this conference is because a lot of these movements don't exist. It's just really initially starting the momentum on campus. And so I turned to student government because I thought that there would be like the most passionate people, and then just to help promote some of those voice and change, especially amid the residential life decision, which was a really big deal. Student government did step in. And so I had been involved pre-COVID. Imagine a time like that. And we had worked on some like issues about starting the initial groundwork for the transfer hub, and then for trying to advocate for, so to clarify before, transfer students aren't eligible for merit scholarships on our campus. It's purely first years. And so trying to make that an issue and people aware. It's a very small percentage of the campus, but I mean, it's the small things that eat away at you. You know, when you walk in on campus and you see welcome class of 2023, and you're like, well, I'm not actually that class.
Exactly.
And so just trying to alleviate like the small things to make it a more inclusive environment.
Awesome.
Yeah, for me, I was involved in student government, so I made like 2 initiatives. The first one was like to create like a position so that someone would advocate for transfer student. So I was the very first transfer student support commissioner on my campus. So I made that position, and I was very loud and clear, like we need transfer representation. And other than that, like during my time as a commissioner, my very first project was to create, was inspired by how UCLA and UC Berkeley has done it. So I kind of mentioned them. I copy from the best and make it my own. So basically, I created like my own course or class or program so that I can help incoming transfer students get integrated into campus. Okay. And I made like my own syllabi, good for like a whole year. So 2 quarters for like mentees and like 1 quarter for like mentors who wants to help transfer students. So I call it STEAM. So it's called Student Transfer Engagement, Access, and Mentorship. And it's been thriving this school year. I didn't expect that there was going to be a lot of applicants, but we don't have enough mentors because I only had hired 15 mentors, but we had a total of 100 applications. But because since like the institution can let us have 100 students to be managed, we only managed to get about 45 students.
Okay.
Which is a start. It's a pilot program, but hopefully it gets bigger in the future.
Wow. I mean, oh, wow. Let me get my life together. Okay. You all are making me feel like, what am I doing? And just as you all are sharing, as I'm listening to you guys and just thinking about how SGAs function across the country, I think it would be pretty cool maybe for a transfer liaison in each SGA, whatever schools offer transfer admissions. I would say a transfer liaison would be great for those purposes of just helping that one person on SGA that really kind of hones in and focuses their efforts on helping the transfer students to assimilate well. So just something to think about. All right, Katie, this one is for you. I know that you have a strong knack for social media, so I did want to ask if you could speak with us a little bit about the importance of social media presence for prospective transfer students.
Sure, and I want to say it's very sweet of you to say I have a strong knack for it, because I don't think I'm very good at it. But
Okay,
if
well,
anybody,
a knack, okay.
if
a knack.
anybody here has been in a session with me, you've probably heard me talk about social media already, because I'm a little bit obnoxious about it. But the reason why I think social media is so important when it comes to prospective students, community college students, and transfer students themselves is because it offers usually freely, readily accessible, 24/7 representation of what transferring looks like. And for me, I started my YouTube channel when I was in community college because I saw other people making vlogs, which are like video blogs about their daily life on a community college campus. And I was like, well, if they can do it, then I can do it too, right? And they were the people that I needed to see to have that motivation to continue going to community college and figure out what the transfer process looked like. And once I got onto that train, I started watching transfer students on the campuses I wanted to go to, and I started watching their videos on what the application process looked like. So I really delved in and started using my experience and I guess my limited knowledge of the application process to make videos myself about, like, here are the things that I did to get into the universities that I did, here are the courses I took in community college, how they transferred, the extracurriculars I took. I even read my essays out loud in my YouTube videos so that people have the opportunity to have this peer-to-peer knowledge, this resource, that they don't have to go to their community college, their university, or an authority figure to get. Because I find that an intimidation factor on community college and university campuses can be something that can prevent students from going and looking for resources. So I turned to social media myself because I was a little bit afraid to ask those questions. And now I'm trying to provide the same resource for students so that they can understand what that process looks like themselves.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. And that just drove me to think about my process. One of the reasons why I think I transferred so much, we didn't have, like, the World Wide Web, honey, in the 90s, honey, was not really too much of a thing. It started like that end of the 90s. It started kind of you could see its head a little bit. But for me, it was just all about going to the library and going through the books, sifting through books, trying to read up on colleges. I made a really unpopular move one time and just went to a college that my best friend was at. That was a real unpopular move. My mother was like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, no, it's a really great school. She was like, what do you know about the school? Well, Yolanda goes there. So that's really all that needs to be known. But I think it's really cool now, especially nowadays, just social media and just how huge it is. You mentioned vlogging. Are there any other ways that you would think that you can think of, or any of you can think of, on social media that would be helpful and useful for our prospective transfer students?
Right. So I think social media can pose a challenge, especially for institutions, because one of the things that is so important about social media is creating that, it's called a parasocial relationship, but it's that organic connection that happens with an individual and not an institution. So it can be a challenge, but the great thing about social media is that you are meeting students where they're at, because there is a huge demographic of both younger and older students who are using social media. So it's a great place to go and meet them where they already are and offer them that information and those resources. So I have found the community college students on TikTok.
Oh.
So that's a great way to, like, get their attention and to try to get them to other resources such as the YouTube channels where there's longer form content. So it can be a little bit difficult, but I have found that smaller campus groups are more effective than a campus-wide, like, Instagram platform, for example. So when you have the smaller campus groups, people can find their identities in those smaller campus groups, and a lot of those campus groups also highlight the students who are part of those groups. So they're on Instagram stories, they're making TikToks, they're highlighting the student, putting student faces where other students can see them, and finding their identities in those smaller groups on social media.
I love that. Does anyone else have any advice, anything to lend to that conversation regarding social media?
I just really want to second what Katie has said, because that is how I found my community at UCLA. I would not have found our student government if I hadn't found their Instagram account and had seen that they were looking for people to get involved. And if it wasn't for our Transfer Student Center, Instagram also sharing that content. And our Transfer Student Center has a really great relationship with our student government office. And so they work together to platform opportunities for transfer students. And it's often how a lot of transfers feel plugged in. And so it was the way that I got involved with the transfer community, and it's the way that I continue, I think, to reach other transfers. And there are many transfers who tell me, like, oh, I saw this pop up on someone's Instagram story, and that's how I knew to get involved, not through like email blasts or newsletters. And so I think it works, and it's how I got to where I am now, at the very beginning. And so I think that like making that commitment to that kind of outreach, I think, is important.
Oh my goodness. I'm so glad you have the mic because I have another question for you. So how do you think that your journey, just this journey, even just thinking about the stories from your parents and things of that nature, but how do you think that your journey has prepared you for advocacy as it relates to transfer students?
Yeah, I think that lived experience, first of all, is very, very important. And I think that it definitely is why transfer students need that visibility and to be centered and to be included in decision-making spaces. And I think that that's one of the things that I've definitely realized at UCLA in particular is that the reason that transfer students can so often be swept under the rug is because they're not in the spaces that they should be to be listened to when really important decisions are being made in campus spaces. And so I think for me, letting students tell their own stories and their own narratives and having those who are in power and who have the decision-making capabilities to genuinely consider those narratives is something that's really important. It's something that y'all are doing by listening to us chat today, and it's something that I think our administrators and staff members and faculty across the university can be doing better in order to ensure that our transfers are being supported. I mean, before my position existed at my university, parenting students were not getting the support that they needed in order to enroll in classes. Non-traditional students did not feel supported in the classroom space. The narratives and stigmas around community college were so much worse than they are now. And so I think it really takes centering that voice. And for me, that means that I have had to learn not to be quiet when I am told to be, and to, when I notice that I'm not being heard, I have to make myself heard. And it also means that when I end up in places like this, in the representative position that I have, that then I platform those other students.
That's right.
In order to make sure that they can share their narratives. I mean, I'm not a parenting student myself, but I have brought parenting students into meetings with the academic senate and into meetings with other council members and into meetings with administration. And so I think it really takes knowing yourself and knowing who needs to be in the room, and then making sure that those who need to listen do.
Yo, transfer champions, y'all heard that? Okay. I'm like, I almost want him to drop the mic after that. Oh, that was good. That was really good. How many of you all were going through the application process during the pandemic? Everybody, or just one? Right before? Okay. All right. So, Katie, I'm going to address this to you though. Given the impact of this pandemic, can you share any barriers that either you've experienced or people that you know have experienced that have come as just as a direct result of this pandemic?
Sure, and first of all, I want to say Herman is amazing, and I want to give him another round of applause. But
and I'm sitting right next to him. I thought Brandon said I was the incomparable one. I'm like, actually, that's okay. All right.
Sure. So I have a couple of perspectives on this, me personally, and then kind of the UC Berkeley campus, like wider. For me personally, finding like communication from the campus has been incredibly difficult. I found out like maybe 1 week before classes started what we were actually doing in terms of online or in person. That was a really frustrating experience. Finding housing during the pandemic has been difficult. The fact that we still have to pay full tuition when we're not getting access to campus and resources. That's another thing that's been incredibly frustrating. But on a more personal level, I have immunocompromised family members at home, so I haven't been able to go home as often as I would like because I have to be considerate of their limitations and their health, so I'm lacking a little bit of that support. And then the campus at Wide currently, like in the last week, we've been having a lot of difficulties with things like how many students are in the classroom, whether or not we can open the windows. I was not there because I was here, but I heard from a lot of my classmates that one of our classes, people were sitting on the floor because the room was so packed. So they have been not communicating clearly, not considering the logistics of having a pandemic classroom, not offering more hybrid options. It's either online or it's in person, and they have not given us the option to do one or the other or both, the hybrid way.
Yes.
So it's been, and the other on campus, the immunocompromised students have also been feeling disadvantaged and not centered right now, because for them it's either they get their education and possibly get sick and end up in the hospital, or they have to miss out, drop out of school. So that's kind of the personal perspective and the campus-wide perspective right now.
That is heavy. That's heavy. I mean, this pandemic, I think what's frightening for me is that we don't know where we stand in this pandemic. Are we still, I mean, people keep saying we're in the midst of it, but are we truly in the midst of it? Is this still the beginning? Like, we don't know where we are. So I think that's what's been so frightening for me, just personally, just don't know where we stand. But I definitely, my heart goes out to the students there, just kind of, just in limbo, and just,
that class that I'm talking about, it is a required class for graduation. So some people are in their last semester taking this course, and they don't know what they're going to do right now, so.
Okay. All right, Noelle. I'm just going to, keep my heart. I'm going to keep words and heart. Okay. So, Noelle, what are some ways in which Transfer Champions can assist transfer students to feel more connected at their respective campuses?
I have 3 things to say about this question. First, I think it's definitely generating momentum across the different classes. Transfer students, we have 3 years, maybe 2 years, like depending on how long, but traditionally like 3 years at the most to make a difference on campus. And as soon as you leave, like that momentum is lost. And so speaking to administrators who are probably going to be at their institutions for longer than that period of time, helping generate the momentum across the different transfer classes to create that transfer community and keep like, a lot of the conferences I've went to here talk about these long-term initiatives, and those can't happen if every single year you have to start over. And then I would say like being seen and being heard. Recognize like transfer students, we're students like anyone else. Like there's no need for that qualifier, and so making sure that like you're seeing transfer students and including them as part of the community. And then the third thing I'll say is like we're not set like afterthoughts. I found a lot of the challenges at my institution were just because, not like malintentioned, but because like transfer students were sort of forgotten in the process. Like, oh, we made this programming for our first years and transfer students, or like, and then transfer students. And so we had our orientation this year, and it almost felt like it had been forgotten just because it was like planned at the last minute. Obviously, COVID had affected it a bit, but it was like very, you just kind of forgotten in the process. And then you see a lot of that as I'm working on the merit scholarship stuff. I was speaking to the administrator, and he was like, I don't think it was because it was designed to exclude transfer students. They just weren't really remembered in the process when it was designed. And so making sure like every time you're developing a new program, every time you're thinking about something, think how is this going to affect all of the students, including transfer students, including first years, including your juniors and your seniors, your non-traditional, your gap year students, your parenting students. And so like making sure to just, it meets students where they're at, instead of being like, we're going to meet this group of students and then everyone else kind of, we'll make it kind of accessible for them, but not really design it around them.
Got it. Wow. Well, I'm going to wrap us up with one final question, and I'm going to pose it to all of you. I want you all to share your thoughts. How did you all prepare for, just to be able to share your stories in such a profound way? And I want you guys all to respond to that question.
I can go first if you guys want to take a second to think about it, because I've been practicing it a lot. I have been making those YouTube videos ever since I was in community college, so I have a lot of experience talking about it, thinking through it, and wanting to share my story with people. And I feel really privileged to have an entire room of people who are willing to listen to me, because on social media you have to understand how to play the algorithm, so you might not necessarily get the views that you're looking for, but my motto is always, if I reach one person who needs to hear something that I needed to hear, then I've done my job. So I want to say thank you guys for letting us have this platform, because that's something that's really important to me, is having a platform.
Awesome.
I think it was a review of just how I ended up here, like what the steps in that process were, every single decision. Sometimes it sort of feels like a dream, like, did this really happen? Yes, it really did happen. We really did go through a pandemic. Yes, he really did change schools. And so just thinking back and thinking about the steps that people helped me along the way with, like the advisors that really met me where I was at and really made the effort to make me feel seen and heard and encouraged in the like discouraging process of trying to create change on a very like very organizational, very bureaucratic campus. And so just trying to move that forward, pass that movement on, and give to me what I've received, or give to others what I've received.
For me, like how I prepared for this moment, honestly, I just wanted to make sure that. So my advisor told me like it doesn't matter if one person or a full room of people listen to you. There's always that one person who's gonna relate to you, and like, cause like I'm the type of person who has been like I love being in the background, you know, and then cause I'm gonna be honest, I talked to my advisor before. You know, I was preparing myself like yesterday, and my advisor was like, well, you're Beyonce too. You can be Beyonce too. So basically, I just want to make sure that, you know, that I'm listened, I'm heard, I'm visible, and I'm representing my school and advocating for transfer students that hopefully y'all will take away something from all of us, this amazing people that, you know, I've met that, you know, like there's going to be a major shift on like advocating for like transfer students. And that's like the most important thing for me.
Thank you.
What he said.
You want to be Beyonce? You're Beyonce too?
No, we're all
Not
Beyonce.
two Beyoncés, but here's four. Okay.
I think that when I think of transfers, I think being a transfer student is all about having a story. Because every transfer student has their story. I mean, we each had our own trajectory, our own pathway, whatever it took for us to get to the institutions that we are going to graduate from. And I think that, of course, we can and should have our articulation agreements and our pathways and our centers. But I think that the way we get to all of those things is by listening to those stories and by centering those stories and by letting those narratives reveal to everyone that to be a transfer student is to kind of have to find your own pathway and make that own path for yourself. And students do that in so many different ways. And so when I was thinking about getting up on the stage and talking with everyone, I knew that I have my own story, and so the best thing that I can do is just be as much of myself as possible. And I think transfers want to be genuine, and they want to show what they have to offer and what they have lived. And I think that to listen to that and to let that truth stand on its own is the best thing that we all can do as we serve transfer students.
Well, I just want to commend all four of you all. As I read your stories, I knew when we had like a little gap in the planning committee, I'm like, well, I mean, we could do a panel. You know, I could definitely get them to share a little bit more about their stories, and not in just the like a usual way where it's just like long and boring. You know, the stories are always good, but I wanted you all to hear just a little bit more about how the stories are coming to be. Because of course the stories are not complete yet. We still have them, they are still here, and they're thriving at their own universities. But I want us to take away as transfer champions just to really handle the transfer students with grace. If we handled them, and students at large, just handle them with a little bit extra grace right now. I know that this pandemic has been long, it's been daunting for so many of us. As I'm reading and reviewing applications for my freshman population that I manage, I just, in every essay, the word anxiety, the word depression. These are two words that I see on every application, you all. So if we could just handle people with care, when they come to us and they need something, if we could give them the time that they need, because you never know. With suicide is up, the rates are through the roof right now, so they need these students, they need the ears, they need the hearts, and we are the right people for this. So I'm super excited. Thank you all so much for agreeing. I didn't have to, budge you guys too much, but thank you guys so much for being so open and honest. Thank you all so much for lending us your ears, your hearts, and we are done. Thank you guys so much again for the planning committee for allowing this, and thank you guys. Have a great rest of your conference. And just, see, you stand up and bow, y'all, stand up. Give them a bow, something, yeah. You guys are amazing, amazing.